Hi there. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks is an exciting new digital opportunity to obtain mentoring to help you improve your modeling. You will meet talented modelers and manufacturers from all over the world who share their model building skills and artistic advice. Improve your modeling and increase the confidence in your modeling efforts. Share your building efforts with fellow modelers and have some fun doing it. The shows are live on Zoom and YouTube, so be sure to join in and ask your questions. Now here is New Tracks founder and your host, Jim Kello, MMR.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really do appreciate it. Hope you'll come back often and tell your friends about us so that they can have some fun and join us too. I want to start first with Father Ron and the prayer for New Tracks. Father Ron.
O God, as we express our creativity in creating in miniature the world around us, may we marvel at the beauty and genius which created the world and instilled in us a portion of your great knowledge and wisdom. Give success to the work of our hands, O God. Amen.
Thank you so much, Father Ron. We really do appreciate all of the help that you provide us. Let me next make a few comments before we actually start the show. First, I want to thank Martin Breckbill, the MMR. Martin's the editor of O-Scale Trains, and he publishes our schedule for us for free, and I really do appreciate that. He didn't have to do it, but he does it, and it's a way for us to try to get our message out. So, Martin, thank you so much for your help. Next, I want to talk about the NMRA in a couple of different areas. I've been talking to Frank Koch about the possibility of giving AP credit for the presentations that are done on our show. Things like the Build Along presentations, the My Build presentations that we sometimes get, the Watch Me Build presentations, those kind of things. And I got several emails back from Frank outlining that, yes, people doing those kind of things on our shows can earn points toward the author certificate under the achievement program for the NMRA. And if this is the second time they have done that clinic or that presentation, then they can't then duplicate and get author points for it. But they can count it toward the volunteer certificate and earn points that way. So what we've done is I've appointed Pat Rivard, whose idea to do this in the first place, this was, as the chairman of this thing, to represent New Tracks and to make sure that anybody who has in the past made a presentation or wants to in the future, if you'll contact Pat, Pat will make sure that you get the proper documentation and the certificates you need in order to include it with your application for those two different achievement program awards. Pat's email is PAT period Rivard, RIVARD, at newtracksmodeling.com. And if you'll just send Pat an email telling him about the presentation you did, which awards you think that you qualify for, and the approximate date that you did it, then Pat can verify it through our records, and he'll send you out the certificate. If it's one that you want to do in the future and get credit for it, just tell Pat, and he'll make sure that once you've done it, that the certificate will be forthcoming. So I'm really happy about that because it's something that I should have thought about a long time ago, but it's one of those things that it just didn't hit my mind, and I didn't think about it. Pat's the one that brought it up, and it's taken us several weeks to get all the details worked out, but I really appreciate the NMRA agreeing to have the clinics be part of the achievement program. or part of the volunteer certificate if it happens to work out that way. So it's another motivation for you to do your presentations on our show. And I hope that that does stimulate some of you that haven't done it in the past to maybe consider it. So Pat, I've given you his email address, and if you'll just contact him, then we'll go from there on getting it started. New Tracks was asked to do a clinic, a build-along clinic, at the upcoming NMRA National Convention in Dallas, Texas, August the 21st through August the 26th. The person who's going to be doing the clinic for New Tracks is Phil Edholm. All of you know Phil. He's been on the show many times. This is the kit he's going to build. This is the kit that you'll be able to build along with him. The maker of this kit is Alan Rogers, and his company, New Creations Victoria Railroad Buildings LLC, is making this SP handcar shed available to everybody that wants to attend this convention and participate in Phil's clinic on building this model. It'll be roughly a 3-hour clinic on the Thursday night of the convention. And I think you'll have a lot of fun. As I say, you all know Phil. He's done a lot of things for our show in the past, and I think he'll do a fantastic job with this for you. So I hope that if you're going to this convention or considering it, that you'll participate in this build along. And if this one works well, then we hope to have New Tracks in the 2024 NMRA National Convention in Long Beach, California, doing some different kind of clinics, because we'll have more time to get them set up and arranged. But for this year, the fact that we were asked, I appreciate the asking us to help, and we were able to get Phil and Alan to participate. Thank them both so much, and I hope now that it's a very great success out there, and a lot of you going to the convention will participate in that clinic. Next, I'd like to talk about our scholarship program. I couldn't be more pleased with the way the scholarship program is starting to set up. We are literally doing everything we can think of to try to get the word out to as many potential applicants as we possibly can. Today, an article came out in the local newspaper where I live about me and the program and about New Tracks. I hope that a lot of these kind of things can happen across the country. I've contacted the local Associated Press people, and I'm trying to encourage them to include something about New Tracks and our scholarship program nationally. And if we can include that, that's just another way I think that we can try to communicate. I've talked to the local Boys and Girls Club where I live. Couldn't have been more supportive. We're interested in it, help promote it, no problem. Tell all of the kids that participate in their programs that would be eligible, absolutely no problem. I believe that around the country, the Boys and Girls Club is a logical place for New Tracks and for our scholarship program to be discussed and to get applicants knowledgeable and interested in considering our scholarship. You know that this is something that I hadn't thought about before, but somebody on the show mentioned it, and I followed up with the local group, and I couldn't be more pleased about how the local group has handled it. I've got a call in for the national organization, but I haven't heard back from them yet. But that's the next step, since the local people were so cooperative. Father Ron is helping me get the information I need to contact the Scouts organization. And as soon as we can do that, then I plan to follow up with them. As I say, we're doing everything that I can think of and that the committee can think of to try to get the word out, to try to communicate that New Tracks has a scholarship program, wants to work with the applicants, wants to work with the kids going to a STEAM program for college. And we're trying to get that message out every possible way we could think of to do it. We hope that you'll do the same thing for us. Anything that you can do locally would be extremely beneficial. All we're trying to do right now is not raise money. We've got the money. We just want to make sure that we get applicants knowledgeable about our program because it's the first year and it's never been done before. Model railroaders who are graduating from high school really haven't been approached like this before. Not at least to the extent that we're trying to get the word out and trying to communicate what we're trying to accomplish here. So we need all the help doing that we can get, and any ideas you may have, it doesn't make any difference what they are. Let's try them and see what happens. So that's the scholarship situation. I want to introduce David Schultz, because last weekend the Chicago O-scale meet was held, and I understand it was a success like they couldn't believe. David, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, we had a really good show. We were up about 20% in participants this year, which is rather surprising. We were hoping to get a little more than we got last year, but we ended up exceeding that by quite a bit. Started the setup on Friday and started from 1 o'clock, and we let it go till 9 o'clock, which some of the big vendors really appreciated the extra time of being allowed to set up. The show opened on Saturday at 8 o'clock, and 9 o'clock for the other people. Dealers got in at 8, so they get a chance to get set up and wander. They get to wander the show a little bit, because once the show opens, they're pretty much locked behind. I went back to the table that we acquired for you, Jim, and I set up your display, and I was keeping an eye on that all day. And we had quite a few young people in this show, which really surprised me. And there was probably 5 or 6 of them that were gathered around your table and grabbed a few brochures and wandered off them. So I'm hoping that you get some applications out of that. I'm very hopeful. A lot of buying going on. Every dealer that I talked to, even Tangent was there this year, and they were even stunned at how many cars they sold for this show. And most of the dealers, well, pretty much all the dealers I talked to said they had a phenomenal show. So, the people that showed up came to buy. And the contest was fairly well. We had a couple of categories where there were only 2 models, but for the most part, we had a lot of people wander through the contest looking at the entries, and the judging took about 3 hours to go through it all. I don't remember all the winners. So I do remember, there was a steam engine that won. Out of the steamers, there was 2 of them in there. And there was one that was absolutely phenomenal. I don't know. I honestly don't know how they put all that plumbing in those steam engines, but this guy had done it. So it was pretty fantastic. And then, of course, passenger cars, there was one in there. He had all the lights on. Yeah, he had a baggage compartment, and he even had toilet paper rolls on the floor, which for the life of me, I don't know where these guys get that creative, but it's pretty incredible. But and then afterwards, after the show closed at 5 o'clock, it took about an hour to tear down the foyer of the area, and they set up tables. And O-Scale Central sponsored there is a bar there at the hotel, and it's so noisy in there because it's a sports bar. So they have all the TVs cranked up and everybody's screaming and hollering. Well, this year we decided to hold our own private event, and the hotel provided a bartender and a bar, and they set up tables out in the foyer, and we were able to get together and just sit and talk afterwards. And they had a TV screen there. I think Dan Doughty set that up with photos that would just flash by of different modeling, past shows, whatnot. And that was very well attended. And I heard that there were a few people that stuck around till 2 a.m. I was good till about 11, and then I was all in. But so that was very well attended. So just little enhancements to keep making the show better and better. And I think that was very well received. On Sunday, we had to close a little early because the hotel had some big convention coming in on Monday, and they needed the ballroom to tear it down and get set up. So we asked the dealers to, close at noon and start tearing down, and that we would offer any help we could. And I was absolutely amazed that after 2 hours, everything was cleared out, and the hotel was very impressed with the whole operation. And I had one guy come up to me who has just recently came over to O-Scale, and this is nothing nothing bad about the rest of it. But he said, I can't believe how friendly everybody is. And I said, well, they're just happy to be here after the last couple of years. So, but he said, I have no regrets coming here. He said, everybody's been pretty accepting that I came from another scale and joined O scale. And he said, I'm stunned at how much there is. And so he was, I ran into a lot of people in that fashion. So all in all, an excellent show. We're set up for next year for March 14th through the 17th, same hotel, same times. And I forgot to mention on Friday, IRM had, I think it was 26 or 27 people sign up to come out there, and they offered a guided tour instead of just letting you wander the grounds and go in and out of the buildings. They said if they could get 20 people to show up, well, they ended up with about 26. So they had a guided tour around there, and then even offered like a box lunch for everybody that came. So we heard some positive reviews on that everybody was very pleased with going to IRM and checking that out. So the Chicago show is becoming a little more than just a flea market. It's becoming an event. I think it always has been an event, but we're trying to enhance it a little more, stretch it out a little bit more so people have more enjoyment over the overall. So a good show. I didn't meet anybody who didn't have a good time. Usually you get one or two that, well, this could have been better, that better. But this year, everybody was quite pleased. So, and that's about the wrap up of the Chicago show for this year.
Well, David, I heard one bad report for it. One really, it's ugly. It really is.
All right.
There wasn't a single trolley model in the contest.
Yeah, that's because the trolley modelers didn't come.
You got to get those South Shore guys out there.
I know it. Well, we're doing everything we can. They're more than welcome to come out there, and we'd love to have them. So hopefully next year hopefully we keep growing this. I'd like to keep increasing the attendance to this. So hopefully next year we'll grow it a little more.
Well, fantastic. Congratulations on a great convention.
Thank you.
Well, now I want to tell you about Modeling Lifestyle. That's Thursday night. The next one is on March the 30th. Have a great guest, Charlie Rouse, who's an MMR. He's a member of the MER region, Mid-East region of the NMRA. He's on their board by chance. A really nice guy, super modeler. You won't believe what some of the models that you're going to see him talk about. So if you have a few minutes, it's going to start at 7 p.m. Eastern time. The only way you can view it is on our YouTube channel, New Tracks Modeling. Like I say, I think you'll really enjoy meeting Charlie. He is a talker. You will enjoy hearing from Charlie. And I think we've got a brief video about the show.
Join the modeling lifestyle at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on March 30th, where we will feature the modeling lifestyle of Charles Roush, MMR. Charles and his 3 friends will discuss his modeling and the friendships he has built in the hobby. Charles will discuss the models and lifestyle that helped him become a master model railroader.
I love the sound of a whistle.
And so put it on your calendar, Thursday, March the 30th, 7 p.m. The build-alongs coming up. We've got 3 of them that we can talk about this evening. The first one, Father Ron Walters is going to do. And he's going to be talking about Inkscape and their program and how he makes windows. And I think you'll really find it interesting and learn an awful lot about a fairly easy way to get involved in CAD programming. At least that's what I'm told. Touch Toggle on April the 19th. And then Tom York on May the 10th. And the building that Tom is doing is an O-scale structure. It's limited to 25. Interesting enough, all 25 are signed and numbered. This is something that Tom came out of retirement to do for us. And he'll be on the show, primarily showing not so much how to put the 4 walls together and so forth, but how he paints and weathers the models so that when they're finished, they really are works of art. No other explanation of them. And I really do appreciate Tom doing this for us. All of these models are on our website. All of them are offering significant discounts to the modelers who want to build along with the builders on the show. So I hope that you'll go to our website and order the kits and participate with the builder on the show. Maybe the last time you'll ever see Tom York build a model anywhere. So that's something not to miss. And of course, Father Walter, he's on every show, and we thank him so much for all he does. But he's also a fantastic modeler. And I'm the one that asked him to do this, kicking and screaming, I might add. But he agreed to it, and I'm really looking forward to see how he uses this program to make the windows and some of the parts that he produces. And as far as Touch Topples is concerned, fantastic product, an awful lot to learn. And this is your opportunity to save some money and learn at the same time. Well, now I'd like to turn it over to Chris Corse and let Chris talk about the upcoming My Build, which is scheduled for our April 26th show. Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. This month we're going to try something a little bit different, and share screen going here. There we go. All right, this month we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to try a theme show. And the theme is going to be spring. So show us your vegetation, your scenery, wherever you can take it that relates to spring. And for those that don't have something along those lines, that's okay. Just send us what you've got, but we're trying to aim towards a theme on this one and see if we can get some different things coming out. Like Jim mentioned, the next My Build is April 26th. And to participate, email your photos to me, railrunner130@hotmail.com. And we're looking to possibly do a door prize of some sort. So haven't quite figured out exactly what that is yet, but as soon as we do, we'll let you know. So anyway, like I said, send us your photos. And if you have not participated before, which we strongly encourage you, if you have not participated in the My Build before, or if you haven't contributed anything in a while, please send us something, because we want to get a variety. So that's what we've got for tonight. So I'll turn it back over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate all the work you put in doing this for us. Thanks so much. And we really do want to see what people are working on. I mean, that's part of what the show is all about. You can learn how to do some stuff, but we'd like to see what you're doing. So this is the opportunity for anybody on the show to participate. Well, now I want to turn this over to Hank Primas, if he's here. I don't know if Hank, are you here this evening? Were you able to make it? If not, I'd like to turn it over to Phil Edholm for the quick tip of this evening. Phil, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. So we're going to continue with the discussion we did last week, which is a little bit and this is a discussion. I'm finding this is less of a clinic and more of a discussion, because it turns out these are tools that a number of us use. The goal here was to make them open and addressable to the folks that are not using them today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just kind of talking about where we were. We talked a little bit about how to sketch things. We decided we talked about doing two different objects. The first one we talked about doing was this crossing sign. And what we did was we kind of identified the height on it, and then we were able to identify the crossing, and we actually showed how to put this together. So if you print this, you now can actually print it out. And then you'll have your crossing sign. You can glue those back to back if you need to be see it from both sides. If it's only going to be viewed from the front side, you only need the one side. This was the second object we had. And so what I'm going to like to do tonight is basically kind of talk about how would we replicate this, and instead of making it the Missouri Pacific lines, let's make it the Central Pacific lines. But we want to use this logo to create a logo. So what we've done is I've actually copied this logo. I found this on the internet. We'll talk about that next week about how to find these things. I found this on the internet, and what we want to do is figure out how can we use the tool set we have to replicate this logo. So, remember we come up here and we click and we get this tool set. And if you kind of look through the tool set, what you'll notice if you go all the way down here with stars and banners, that they actually have a star. Now, the stars they have are basically 16 and 32. They're kind of 8 doubling size stars. The Missouri Pacific lines is actually 42. But the reality is I don't think many people would see the difference in our logo that we're trying to use as a master for. So we decided we were going to go with 32. So we'll go ahead and we'll put here, holding down the shift key, and we now get basically a starburst. One thing you'll notice is that starburst is at a different angle than the starburst over here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to move this starburst over here, and we're going to actually go down like this. And we just made it the same size as those back there, because what that's going to let us do, and I hit the shift key here when I move it side to side, if I hit the shift key, it keeps it from moving up and down. It's even though I'm moving my mouse up and down, it stays on the line. So that lets me line it up there. And you'll notice that if you kind of look around, you notice there's this yellow dot here, and this yellow dot allows you to adjust the angle of those. So, if we want to get in really close, we can zoom in here on our slide, and we're going to move this up a little bit as we go here. And we can now look up here and say, okay, let's get this exactly right so it matches the angle of the one that was already there. So it's a little deeper because they're a little smaller, but now we've created something that's essentially the same size. So now what we need to do is we need to figure out how to color this. And this is a tool I'm going to show you. And unfortunately, because I'm doing this on my second monitor, the way this works, it doesn't work well on the second monitor. So I'm going to have to go over and do it on the first monitor, and then I'll show you, but you can try it. This is called a color contrast analyzer. If you just search for that on the internet, and after I get done, I'll find a link and send it to you. It's actually developed in the UK. It's designed for contrast for color blindness. So you can put the background and the foreground text of your website in it. It'll tell you whether or not someone who's got relative color blindness can read what you've got. But what it's really good for is you can grab one of these tools here and you can come out and you can find colors. Now, the problem, for some reason, this is just not finding it over here. So I'm going to go over here on my other screen where I can find it. And what I did was I just took this tool, just like this one here, and I went over and I clicked, and you'll notice right here, it was just gray, so it's giving the 240, 240. What I did was I clicked that tool on this color right in here. And you'll notice that what it did was it gave me an RGB color 124, 24, 26. So if we go over here and we now go into the shape fill, we can pick shape colors. And we can enter 128. I don't know, what was it, 20, 44, and 26? I'll have to go back and look. I didn't remember now, and I forgot, of course. Let's bring this guy back up here. 24 and 26. So this is 24 here. So now if we hit OK, we've replicated that color. So just understand how we did that. Let me go through it one more time, because I went pretty quick. Is you go to shape fill. You can do the same thing for the outline if you want to. We'll see how we do that in a moment. What you do is you go to shape fill, you go to more fill colors. There you can choose either some standard colors. And by the way, if you want to, you can make this bigger so you can actually see it better. Or you can choose custom colors. And there's this color chart that you're actually working off of. But down here, you can actually enter the RGB rating. So we now have essentially what looks like kind of that inside there on our Missouri Pacific. Maybe I think I'd like it just a little bit up more. Just my eye says that should be up. So now the next thing we need to do is we need to create the white background. And I'm going to make the assumption here that we're just going to go ahead and have the red be the edge of this versus having a separate white on the outside. Because typically when you go to print these things, trying to do something on the outside of the white, you're going to cut off anyway. So again, take a circle tool, and we now make a circle. So that circle now, we're going to center on this. So to make this a little easier, I'm going to move this off to the side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these over and I'm going to center them. And you notice they kind of locked in on this centering at the 0 line, because what that's going to do is that's going to let me move this one over there. And I'm going to lock it on the center line. And then I'm going to go up to the center line. I got to move it up a couple of clicks. And so now it's centered. So what I can do is I can pull it out and make it bigger. Now, when I do that, it uncentered it actually a little bit. So I have to do it on both sides, then I'll recenter it. And remember, it's now in front. I want to see that red icon behind. So to do that, I go to Arrange and I send it to the back. Remember, arranging, I'm sending it to the back. So now I've got that in the back. Now I want to change the colors. So the shape fill, I want to make it white. And the shape outline, I want to use that same red. And you'll notice here where it says recent colors, where you got all these colors up here, but the recent color is that one I selected. So that's the red. So I can select the red. And now what I can do is I can select the weight of that line. Well, obviously that's not enough weight. So what I need to do is I need to open that toolbar over there. Remember that toolbar over there where we said format shape? Now we can go look at the line, format shape, right click, take off the drop-down menu, format shape. Format shape will appear over here. Or you can do it by doing shape format up here and using the tools up here. Once you have this, now we can make that line 12 points. That look about right? Looks about right for what we wanted. Maybe a little bit, we want it a little bit smaller than it is. So one of the things we can do is we can actually do that over here by going to size. We want to lock the aspect ratio because we want to keep it a circle. Let's drop the size down here a little bit. Let's stripe it down to 6.8 and let's see what it looks like. Now, of course, once we do that, we've got to recenter it. So we come over here, we grab it and we recenter it and it just kind of centered itself. And you know, that doesn't look too bad. Now what we've got to do is we've got to go inside and we've got to create a white line inside. So since we have this here, we're just going to copy it. Control C, Control V, that copies it. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to change this a little bit. And then what we want to do is we want no fill and we want a white outline. And now that line can become our inner line. You see how easy that was to put that inner line there, and it actually matches, the thickness matches between the two lines because we used the same line. So now the last thing we have to do is just put the text in there. So let's choose our text. Let's say we want to do the Central Pacific, Pacific lines. I missed a carriage return there. Sorry about that. Now, the first thing about our Central Pacific lines is we want to center it. So remember up here were these tools for text right here. We're on the home page. Tools for text are right here. Click and we can center it. Want to make it a little bit bigger. And now this is where it gets interesting because you want to actually go pick some text that looks like that text over there. So we'll bring it over here. If we go up to the text, you notice that there's some things here that have colors. This one looks like a marker. This looks like a text. So maybe that's the one that would make the text white. And then if we make it bold and let's make it a little bit bigger. So now what we need to do is we need to find a font that we feel comfortable matches this font over here. And the way you do that is you highlight this whole box, not the text. If you highlight the text, you'll only change the text. If you highlight the box around the text, it does all the text. And then we come up here and we start looking for fonts. And the beauty of Windows is they give you all these fonts. Now, one of the fonts I kind of like is Bond Script is nice, kind of a railroady. I kind of like Barlow here. So this one here looks pretty good to me in some ways. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that I actually did this so that you can't see the Missouri Pacific there, and that's actually not very good. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually move these two over select all that. We're going to move them over a little bit so that we can see better what we're doing when we do that drop down. So again, we come back over here, highlight the text, whoop, pick the drop down, and now we're going to pick what text we want to use. So we talked maybe the Barlow, that might be a good one. The bond shrift, but it looks a little thin. So you basically look through here till you find a font that you're comfortable with for what you're doing matches. You'll notice most of these have the capability of putting the font in there, and there are so many fonts, you can almost always find something that matches the font that you have in place. You know, I think maybe let's look even at Arial for this one. This is Arial. We can do an Arial. We can do an Arial dark and Arial black, or we can do just a basic Arial that's bold. So now if we do whatever text, whatever color you finish now, you'll notice we now have the Central Pacific signs. Now, the weathering and stuff I would do afterwards, but you can do the rest of it ahead of time. Now you just take this, and if you copy it, you can now go to another slide as easy, and you can paste this, paste special, paste it as a PNG object. And now this is just a scalable object that you can use anywhere or ship to anyone, and it can be printed and done on anything. So from the standpoint of putting your object together for your railroad, that basically, you know, creates the object you would need to be able to have a logo. So anyway, that was kind of covering tonight a little bit about how you use some of the tools to create something like a logo. Any questions, comments, enhancements? I'm sure there's some suggestions. Go for it.
Bill,
Go, John.
is there an actual align tool inside PowerPoint?
Things align automatically, and you
They
get
do,
dotted
okay.
lines when they align. So there's an alignment tool. But the nice thing is if you're doing anything circular, you can align to the center of the slide, and they'll drop a line to the center of the slide.
All right, so it'll like, yeah, okay, it'll snap to the center.
It snaps to the center reasonably well. It's not aggressive. You kind of got to search for it a little bit sometimes, but yeah.
It's great.
Bill, I'd want to mention to people, if they're really trying to match a font for some type of sign they're making or something, if they can't find the font that is actually in the Windows drop-down menu, you just look online for
that's true.
fonts, and you'll find many samples and sites that have free fonts available, and they're very easy to install on the Windows platform once you download it.
And I think the other thing to always remember is, and I was going to bring it and show it, and I'll try to bring it next week. I'm doing a sign for Western Union, and I couldn't find exactly the right font. I kind of narrowed it and played with it.
Mhm.
And after I printed it out, you'd be so hard pressed to see it. I mean, you'd have to be practically climbing into the middle of the model to see the difference in font size. And I think you can be a bit pedantic when you're looking at something on the screen and it's a foot wide. When you're going to print it, it's going to be a quarter of an inch wide.
Exactly.
And so,
especially once you weather it.
Exactly. There's a little bit of, it's good enough for, it's good enough for the distance work we do in modeling. John, I think John had a question. You were raising your hand there. You got to unmute. There, you're unmuted, John. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, it said the host would unmute me. So that this is my first meeting. I finally got logged in. I modeled the Indian Creek Railroad. It's my own little freelance, and I took the speed stripes from Missouri Pacific because I like NS. I also do NS, and I took off the bird. Let me see. Let me show you. And I thought this would be a great thing to do for making some decals for my other stuff. Like here, see Indian Creek. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. And I thought, man, that'd be neat to be able to print your own, like your decals, right? Or whatever, fonts or whatever.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that.
Yep. No, and and in fact, that's, that's one of the things is that you can, with these tools, take something like that, duplicate it, and then print your own decals out. And we'll talk, next week, we're going to talk a little bit about doing photo prints, which are great for signs. And then the next week, we'll talk a little bit of decals. And by the way, one of the things, everybody, if you have a suggestion or hint, speak up. This is not an area. This is not one of those areas anybody's super expert on. I think we all know a little bit about a lot of different things and have figured out our own ways. So cool. I'll throw it back to you, Jim. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Phil. Really appreciate it. By the way, Phil, I sent you an email. Ian is having trouble logging in tonight. So if you could contact him and help him log in.
I will.
I'm in. I'm actually in.
Well, the Australian made it.
I made it. It took me a while, a bit of stress, but I got on.
All right. Well, now I want to
I was going to introduce myself with these.
No, not yet. Hold on a minute. Now, my God. Now I want to introduce Kevin Hunter of Touch Toggle to tell us a little bit about what his clinic is going to be all about. That's going to be coming up here in April. So, Kevin, thank you so much. Is Kevin not with us?
I think we're missing Kevin.
Okay, well, Kevin, you blew it. All right, so next, let me go to Bob Davidson to hear about his workshop tips and tools. Bob, this is really becoming a very, very interesting part of the show that a lot of people are really favorably impressed with.
Well, I appreciate that. And, as someone who's only lost a few fingers in the shop, I'm happy to do this. So.
Well, they keep talking about whiskers. I don't know what they're talking about.
Let's share the screen here and get this going. So yeah, this is Workshop Tips and Tricks with Bob Davidson. That's me. Old theatrical and scenic designer, lighting designer, etc. Build a lot of exhibits and things like that. And I love playing with trains. Tonight we're talking about making the cut. And we're just going to be talking about blades of different types, choppers and stuff. We're not going to be talking about water jets and things like that, laser cutters, etc. Although I'm starting to get into that. But so what we will be talking about are subtractive cutters or saws, and then compressive cutters or blades. So let's start off with saws. Remember, sawing removes material to make a cut. So whether you're using a handsaw or a power saw, there's going to be a loss of materials. And all saw blades have a kerf, which is the thickness of the cut. So you need to plan out your cutting. This is like the guy who used to work in our shop who didn't know why he couldn't get 3 16-inch wide rips out of a sheet of plywood. Well, because you're losing at least an eighth of an inch on every cut. So a lot of large sheet goods come oversized. Melamine specifically comes oversized, usually 49 by 97. So some things accommodate that, but most you need to keep in mind that a blade is going to have thickness. So there are lots of different power saws out there, jigsaws, you can see here, table saw, jigsaw circular saws, cutoff saws, saber saws, band saws, all kinds of saws. So, and then there's all kinds of hand saws to use, and they all have different purposes. So you want to familiarize yourself with what kind of saw you have. Here you see, a rip saw, crosscut saw, miter saw, which has the very flat bottom, square end, which will work with a miter box, some razor saws, hack saws, things like that. So do familiarize yourself with that. Basically, there's two different types of blades. The first we'll look at real quick is just circular saw blades. You can see here there's a lot of different types of tooth sets, and a lot of them will have expansion. They're literally expansion joints to allow sawdust to chip away. But the general rule is the more teeth you have, the smoother the cut. So typically, heavy rip blades are going to be very coarse, and then plywood blades and finish blades are going to have a lot more teeth on them, a 60 tooth, 80 tooth blade. There's also different tooth sets. So when you buy a circular blade, there's a bunch of different grinds to the teeth on a blade. I'm not going to get into it, but they all have, go back and read this slide, when it's up on YouTube. So, the triple chip grind is a more multi-purpose. Also, the alternate bevel blade is a multi-purpose blade. But there are specific rip blades and crosscut blades. There are blades that are made more for melamine and laminate, so they don't chip out as much. So again, you just want to familiarize yourself. Ask the person if you can find somebody at a home store who knows anything to make a suggestion. And then flat or linear saw blades, again, you'll have different tooth sets. And again, the general rule is more teeth will be a smoother cut. On the left here is kind of a chart of band saws. And you can see the thinner the blade gets, so this is 3 millimeter, an 1/8 inch blade, you'll have much more teeth, and you'll also be able to do a much tighter radius. So that's important to keep in mind, certainly with band saws. With saber saws and also, with tiger saws or whatever, you can see here you're going to have different tooth sets of rough, what they call fast wood, clean wood. We talked before when I talked about power tools, you have upcuts and downcut blades. So if you're using a finished piece you want to keep the top good, use a downcut blade. It's going to throw the chips out the bottom of the sheet. There's also smooth blades. There's lots of times that I'll actually use a metal blade on veneer because it'll give a very fine cut. So all these choices you have when you're looking at blades. There are specialty saws and blades. Japanese saws, which are draw saws, typically they will cut on the back stroke, not on the front stroke. And they're real good for flush cutting. If you're ever setting a dowel or something like that, or just need to get in real tight on something. Knife blades, you can get knife blades for saber saws. And these are real good for cutting foam and stuff like that. They slice through it real nice. Anybody who has watched maybe Ken Patterson's web show there where he cuts styrofoam with a chainsaw, that's not how to do it. Diamond blades also, which you'll use with a scroll saw, which are good for cutting plastics and things like that. So again, use the right blade for the right material with the right tool, and it should work out good for you. So the sawing rules: use the right saw for the job, clear your work area. The worst thing you want to be doing is tripping over something or have the stock that you're trying to work with, even if it's as small as it is when we're doing modeling work. Have a clean area. Support or clamp what you're cutting. And what you want to do is support or clamp the finished side, not the offcut, but the side you want to save. Square your saw, regardless of whether if you do have a band saw or certainly a chop saw or something like that, take the time, square it off, make sure it's cut and square for you. And then just some simple things: never leave a power saw running, wear eye and ear protection, and use a sharp blade. Power saws, hand saws, they get dull as well. So if you have somebody around who can sharpen them for you, that's great, do it. If not, throw them out and get a new blade. Some old saws about sawing. So the first one, thanks to my father, always said, let the saw do the work. You never want to push wood. You want to find that speed to go through. Those of you who maybe watch HGTV, Hometown, Ben Napier has a great one: measure once, cuss twice. So always measure twice, make sure what you're doing. We'll get into some things where we talked about tape measures before, how inaccurate they can be. And finally, and I've heard this a lot, I cut it, it's still too short. So if you do have a problem with a cut, start over, collect yourself, remeasure, and get it right maybe the second time. Blades and shears. Blades and shears compress material to make the cut. So what you're doing is actually breaking bonds of molecules as you cut through something. There's all different kinds of knives and blades. Single edge razor blades are very common. Utility or mat knives, X-Acto knives, click knives, which originally were called Olfa knives, which are the ones where you get like 11 different blades and you'd snap them off as you go. Scalpels, people use just about anything with a sharp edge to work, certainly with the model making materials that we're using. Knife edge type. So this is looking at not at the side view of a blade. You know, this is not an 11 blade. What we're looking at is the profile of the actual blade itself. So a section through the blade. And you can see most blades come to a point on both sides. A majority of the blades you're going to use, razor blades, etc., are V-ground blades. So they're ground on both sides. Another blade that we're going to talk about tonight is the chisel blade, and I'll show you why. And these are available, and I'll show you where to get them. So the way a V-ground knife will cut through a piece of material is as you put pressure or draw it along, it has to displace, and these are exaggerated views, but it has to displace the material where the blade is going. And what that'll do is it'll create these little bumps. Eventually, you'll cut through your material, but notice on both sides, you have a beveled edge. And it may be minuscule, but you will have a beveled edge. So if you are doing V-ground knife cutting, you need to, and that's true of like these, choppers, you need to keep that in mind, and we'll get to that a little bit in the rules for this. So here's what, the choppers that are out there, and there's a bunch of different brands of them, etc. But this is a lot, mostly what you're going to find, the actual chopper here. And this is a knockoff that's sold on Amazon. You want to, again, hold down the finished piece. Don't worry about the offcut. Let it go. If it's going to fall to the floor, let it fall to the floor. Hold down your finished piece to support it. Cut long and sand to the finished length because you are cutting on an angle. So you need to square it up and also get it to the length that you want. And also on some things, and it's not true on real thin veneers, but certainly if you've cut styrene, you can feel the bump along the cut edge. So you need to sand the surface to remove the cut bump. So another way to cut stuff is with a chisel knife edge. So on this side is the measured piece, on this side is the scrap piece. When we use a chisel knife, we're only displacing material on one side. So our cut piece, when we go through our measured piece, our good side, is going to cut square. The offcut piece is going to have that bevel and the bump in it. Where do you use this? Well, our good friend Al Collins up at Ultimation. I have one of these. Greg, I know, has one of these. I saw it when Greg did a demo on this program, and I started bugging Al immediately. And I think I got the first one off the production line once he started. It's a phenomenal cutter. I'm not going to make this into an advertisement for it, but what's nice about the Ultimation slicer is, let me go back just a second here. With these, you're kind of stuck to the templates that they give you. So you have a 30-degree cut, a 45-degree cut, a 60-degree cut. With the slicer, it's an adjustable ring. So you can set this for any angle that you may need. And you can see here, he's clearly labeled your square side of the cut and the off side of the cut. The blade's up in here, and the blade is a single-sided ground chisel blade, but it's a standard mat blade. So it'll fit into a mat knife. You can buy the blades. And I have taken a blade and put it on one of my old choppers. So these blades are, I think, $5 a pack, and you can get them at ultimation.ca up in Canada. So highly recommend, even if you don't want to make the investment in the tool, make the investment in the blades. It really does make a difference in how you cut things. Chisel knife rules. Before you can cut your finished piece, you need to make sure that both sides are square. So you want to make sure you're starting with a square edge at the dead side of your finished piece. Make sure your finished piece is on the square unground side of the blade. You can reverse the blade if you're cutting long stock on the slicer. And hold down hold down the finished piece. Don't worry about the offcut. Let it fall or roll away or whatever. Some pointed thoughts, and this is true for both. Let the blade do the work. A lot of times, even with styrene, I'll score with the back edge of a knife blade first, just so it'll keep it on line, okay? Then I'll flip over to the cutting edge. Slow and steady. If it takes 5, if it takes 10 passes, so be it. Change your blades often, throw them out. You know, we all set them aside and say, oh, I'll use that on something that something that doesn't matter. Just throw them out. Put away knives when not in use. Last week we heard about the knife rolling off the table, so we don't want that to happen. And then protect your eyes and fingers, especially with those click knives. They shatter. Okay, they will shatter, and when they shatter, they bounce. So do be careful with that. So that's our kind of trip through that. Our tool of the week this week, here's a cheap one, so you don't have to raid the piggy bank. These are cleaning picks that are made for for taking care of guns. I'm a trap shooter and skeet shooter, and I've started using these to clean the action on some of my guns. They're also phenomenal for like getting glue out of tight spaces and smoothing out joints and things like that. And $369, you get 4 different ones. They're made out of nylon, so they're real easy to keep clean from the glue. So I highly recommend this. Like say, under $4, you can't go wrong. Now this is kind of neat. This week's neat website, decoratorssupply.com. I'll give you a little backstory. When my wife and I were married about 5 years, we restored an 1890s Queen Anne mansion. And at the time I was working in the theater, and we found Decorators Supply. What Decorators Supply does is they make recreations of all the old style plaster ornaments. And while you're not going to buy these, it's a phenomenal resource if you want to research, you're doing an interior finish or an exterior molding or whatever. They have, like here, exterior ornaments, cabinetry. When you go in, you're going to see all kinds of pictures of stuff. It's just a great resource for for looking at some details that you may want to put in to spice up a model. You can also download their catalogs. They have all different kinds of catalogs. You can just download them as PDFs. So really recommend that you look at this. It's a lot of fun, especially if you're doing period work. I'm working in the modern era, so there's not a lot of use for me, but if you're working back in the 1800s, early 1900s, just a great resource. And if you live in an old house, it's a great resource too. So that's this week's website. Next week, we're going to do Dremel time. We'll look at attachments, jigs, and some surprises for everybody. So that'll be next week's episode. And I will stop the share and ask if there's any questions or comments or whatever. Okay.
Bob, I have a question. Oh,
Yeah, sure.
one question. Hey, you mentioned, this is really off topic, I'll go fast. The blades that you got from Ultimation, and I've got some of their tools.
Yeah.
You said I had just previously bought a chopper right before their chopper came out. Unmodified, you can use their blades in the chopper, or do you have to modify them?
You don't have to modify the blade, but you have to modify the chopper arm. So you'll have to drill a hole and you know how you have those little thumb screws?
Yeah.
So you may have to drill and tap a hole.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bob, I think you did a fantastic job, sir. Thank you very much.
Well, you're too kind.
Now I'd like to call on Ian Fainges. And he's from Australia. He is a fantastic figure painter. I'm sure that a lot of you have seen the work that he's produced and posted on the various Facebook pages. And that's the first time that I've seen any of his work. And I was so impressed that I've been trying to get him on the show for quite some time now. And finally, he gave up and agreed to do it. So Ian, thank you so much for doing this. I'm really looking forward to the beautiful figures that you produce.
Thank you, Kevin. So basically, what I'm going to be doing is I'm changing glasses at the moment because I have to be able to see finer. I was actually joking that I was going to put these on, but I don't use those very often. I only use those for eyes when I'm doing larger pieces. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be flipping the phone in a moment so that you can actually see the camera, and I'll be actually filming myself so that I can, hopefully I can do this. How do I swap? Sorry, I'm just trying to swap the camera to the other side. There we go. There you got my workbench. So what I'm going to do here is, it's better if you not look at my face, that you actually see, I'm just getting everything all focused up. So there we are. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab a figure. Now, because I've done this, I've actually got one of the figures that is actually 3D scanned. So these are 3D figures. This was done for me by an Australian friend. He scanned me and then produced an O-scale figure of myself. This is actually designed to stand in a NA class loco, which is the Puffing Billy loco here in Australia, which actually runs on ON30. Runs on 30-inch, which models exactly like ON30. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of things that I start off with. So I got sent this beautiful tool. This is a
Screw cutter.
Sprue cutter. Thank you. Sent to me by Jim. I was using little little pliers, sprue cutters, but this is just absolutely like, it's a gem. I can't let you guys know how amazing this tool is. Now, the other thing is I've got some paints here. I've unfortunately, oops, so I just knocked my light. Sorry about that. Sorry about this. I just knocked everything. These are the paints I use, and you're now getting the secret information. These are actually the actual colors I actually use. So some painters, some figure painters will never let you see that. They won't let you see what colors they mix and how they paint. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get out a very nice brush. So the brushes I use are Neef, so NEEF, and I use Sable. My preferred brush is a Kolinsky Sable, but they're very expensive. They cost about $20 Australian, so they're probably about 15 American. They're beautiful. They're a long bristle, but they come to a very, very fine point. And with painting my figures, it's the point, not the tiny bristle. A lot of people grab 10-0 brushes and wonder why they don't paint very well, because they don't hold paint. So there's the brush. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I always do. I'm using a tile. Excuse me. Vallejo paints block up in the thing. I use a paper clip. So squirt out a bit of paint. And I use a Parasite brand from their game color. I can hope you can see all this. Sorry, guys. I'm sort of working around that I can see everything. Come on, paint, come out. Sorry about this. The paint won't come out. Come out. You might hear some Australian swear words in a moment. Sorry about that. Yeah. Often use just the end of a brush to get the paint out. Just wipe that off. Otherwise, I'll have it all over my hands. Right. So there you have. I've got a little bit of white. So I mix it up, grab the figure. Here we go. So this is a dark flesh I'm using. And you'll see I'm not actually painting the whole face. I am only just doing what we call the highlights. Can you see this? Is this coming up in the film?
Ian, what did you call what you're painting now?
I'm calling, what I do is I'm painting over a black undercoat with a zenithal highlight. So what I'm doing here is I'm not painting the actual whole face. I am only painting the highlights, so where the light hits your face. So if you look very closely, so I'm now
Can you hold it? Can you hold it up a little bit closer to the camera for a moment? Maybe we can see a little bit better there.
No, thank you. I'm sort of looking at two planes. I'm looking at my hand because I have to. Look at my hand.
hold something. If you've got something white, hold it right behind the figure so it forces your camera. Any sort of white card.
Or his handle work.
Right, or a hand or anything. Yeah, that if you put that right behind the figure there, yeah, right up behind it, because it'll, yeah, see how now it focuses. There we go. Excellent. Yeah, see, now you can see.
Yeah, we see it.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Yeah, it's just, you got to force the camera.
Yeah, I understand what you guys are doing. This is going to be really important. I'm about to do this live at the narrow gauge convention in Australia in 2 weeks. So learning what I'm doing here will help me advance it. Now you'll see that I'm now working the nose. See how I'm actually adding a little tiny touch of white.
So Ian, did you start with a primed figure or black or dark gray, or is that this base plastic?
Okay. What I do is black, good quality black spray paint, Tamiya or Vallejo or the Gaines Workshop one, Citadel, because they've got a really fine rattle can. The best is an airbrush, but I can never make an airbrush work for me. I spray it black, flatter the better. Then if you look very closely with this, there's a sort of a light white feel to the figure. What I do is I actually, from a 45-degree angle above the figure, you'll see how I've got it. I'll spray it from that angle, and that's called zenithal lighting. It's a big word, but it's just an art term. All it is it's giving where the light hits the figure. So so the light's coming from here and hitting the figure, so that I'm now getting where the highlights are. So what I'm doing now is I'm just adding along the cheek, on the nose, and just here above the eyebrow. That gives you a lot. So I've literally removed the black almost, but it's just there, and you can just see it. I'll now paint a hand. So I always do a darker color because that acts as my shadow. You'll also see I do a lot of wet blending. What that means is I actually have two colors on my brush. I'm not mixing. I'm not spending time mixing on the palette. I'm actually mixing as I'm painting on the object. So I'm about to take the lighter color now. You'll see me paint my hands a lot. That's my other palette, is my fingers. I use the palm of my hand here, that part there, or the palm of my hand. And when I'm doing flesh, what it actually does is it helps me match my flesh colors. So there you have it. There you have, in the last 4 minutes, I painted. Now you'll also see I'm using I'm not filling my brush up. I'll use the very, 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 very tip of my brush. And what I'm doing is because I'm doing a hand, I'm running from the top down to the bottom, and I'm lightly dry brushing the hand, which leaves that the fact that the highlight on the hand. Okay. I'm going to now add some brown because I'm going to do, and some black. I'm going to do the beard. Okay. Now, if I was doing myself.
Ian, can you hold it up closer to the screen so that we can see your colors
Okay.
as you're adding it? Yeah.
The palettes. Yeah. Okay. We'll try.
Just hold your figure up close, please.
Okay. Okay. When I'm adding, can you see that?
Yep. I know it's hard to get it close though.
But you'll actually see I'm adding the beard. Can you see that?
Yeah, pull it up closer to the camera, please. There you are. Oh, yeah.
So what I'm doing, yeah. See, the problem is if I bring it up near the camera, I can't see the piece.
Yeah, I know.
That's the problem.
I know. I'm sorry.
It's no. I'm not upset. This is a learning curve for me. I'm learning something here myself. So there you are.
Pull it over.
So there,
right there.
I've actually added the beard. Now, if it was myself, I would. Now watch this. I'm adding some. This is adding some. See, that's adding some white to the beard. So I'm actually graying the beard. I've got a brown black underneath it.
So you're blending it.
Yeah, I actually blend as I'm actually working on the face. So I'm actually, it's called wet blending. So I'm not dry brushing. I'm actually using it wet. So that gives you the sometimes I have to work back over it. Okay, now I'm just going to put the figure down because I've got to get some blue. So where's my blue? So that's this blue. This is Prussian blue. Vallejo. Look, any of the good stuff. There's so many good paints out at the moment. The Europeans are the masters of the paints. You've got Spanish firms, you've got Italian firms, you've got European firms that are all producing absolutely magnificent paint at the moment. I have a couple of brands that I use because some of the metallics is really important. You get the right metallics. I use, where are we? I have lost something. I've lost a color. Here we go. Sorry.
Ian, what do you use the metallics for?
Okay. Buttons. Like when I'm doing, especially when you do station masters and all that, they got bright, shiny buttons. Often in you'll see I'll probably do it on this one. I'll use my brush. Okay. Can you see this? We are. Here and here are your buckles. And you'll often just touch them with a little bit of a black silver or a metallic. And that will give you just what it does is when you're doing a figure and you're looking at or photograph, especially photography, because Ben Poole shares a lot of my figures on ON30 and quite a few other places of he's now sharing on Model U as well, which are the guys one I'm painting for at the moment. He features my figures and does little dioramas, and the camera picks up the metallics. So okay, here we go. Mix. I'm mixing up a blue. There's a blue. Now see how I'm actually mixing. That's got a bit of what we call Iraqi sand. Sorry, it's a military color, but it's a magnificent light buff. I try to use real colored names rather than proprietary colored names, because when you go to, say, a art shop and buy Joe Sonia, which are your tube paint, which you can use. My friends who paint top quality, world-class figures often use the Joe Sonia and that sort of paints, and they use what's known as a wet palette. But that's for your bigger figures. Because what you're trying to do is you mix up a color and you don't want it to dry. Does anybody want to know what a wet palette is? I'm not going to push that at anybody. It's just a palette that keeps your paint from drying out. So you can see that I'm slowly see how I'm working the colors. What I'm doing here is I've added a bit of light color, and I'm just getting the edges of the jeans. Okay, I'll turn it over, get some dark. So what I tend to do is I dark from up, so I'm painting up. So I'm filling the grooves with my darker color. Then I come over with my highlight and I just come down.
So
it looks
you're never
really
really using one color at a time. You're always kind of blending and mixing different ones, correct?
I'm constantly blending, and I make mistakes. Because I'm not seeing my colors at the moment. I went too light with that, but you'll see I'm doing what people do with oil paints. I'm blending them into each other. See how that's. So I'm just neatening up my overalls. Now I've got to concentrate. I'm about to do the tops, so I'm doing very fine lines here and here. So that's your straps. So what I'm working on at the moment is getting your shoulder straps. Now, never be frightened to repair any of this. I have people who, I've overpainted. Don't worry about it. You can always repaint another color over it. Also, I do what's known as, okay. Now, if you look very closely, I'm about to do what I do with my stains. So I've just started here in the groin. I've got some brown. What's it called? Marron, charred brown. So I'm giving that into the crutch, and I go into the knees. See, that's where when you're a workman or anything, you kneel down, you kneel on your thing, and the other one is on your bottom. Sorry. Where a mechanic or a engine driver wipes his hands. Now, I don't use black for the shoes. I actually use a brown. So what I'm doing is all the brown work. So you can see I'm putting brown on the shoes. Why I do that is most shoes, if you ever look at them, have scuffs and all that sort of thing. So what I do now, I get a bit of black paint. I make it very, very thin. You'll see I'm actually mixing water in with it, and I just go over it, the brown. Can you see that? And I'm just darkening it. Darken this. So what I'm now doing is I'm just doing a bit of pin washing with my black, because I've actually almost got this. This figure's almost done. That's how quick it is.
Are you using the same brush all the time, Ian?
Yeah, same brush. I just rinse it out. You're not seeing me rinse it. You won't see the disgusting thing I do is every time I finish with it and wash it out, I lick the brush because it keeps my point. That's what I want. Where is it? Where are you? There. Where are you? That it's the brush point that you always want, that fine point.
But what color is your tongue?
Well, the worst thing is when I finish, this part of my hand here is always colored. I go out. My wife says, "Have you washed your hand?" If you can see, I've got color all over my hands. Okay. So now this is a lot of people don't realize this. This is my other trick. See how I've got the thing? I've got some mixed flesh, okay, on my brush. I'm now brushing it on my thumb. I'm weathering up with a bit of, with my hand.
We're losing
my
your
brush.
fingers.
Yeah, I do. I use a lot of my fingers. It's some people use a blender or another brush. I was taught a double brush. You keep one in a dry brush in your mouth. One lady taught me that, but I prefer just rubbing. See, now I'm just adding different stains and everything into the overalls. They're barely there. The colors are barely there. But when you're doing photography, or when you're actually on the layout, it gives you that. So there you are. That's almost the thing. Now, I need more white. Always. The only thing I find is my white, or in Australian conditions, because we are very humid. I've got the air condition. I'm sitting in about 30 degrees temperature, Celsius, not Fahrenheit. And it gets a bit warm here. So I get a bit of drying out on the palette. So I'm about to make the very soft colored hat. There you have it. I've got it it's almost white, but that gives you that real pale blue of US hats. And also the puffing belly boys, their crew hats are very, very pale. Some in Queensland, where I grew up, where I still live, the Sunshine State, they call it. Our loco drivers wore more an English, like hexagonal.
Lost your figure.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I moved it. You got it?
Yep.
There we are. Yeah. There we are.
Ian, do you use that same brush when you do like eyes and lips, if you do all those?
I never do lips. Never do eyes. You'll actually see that I've done. See, the same brush. That's why I use this. This is a number 2. This is a big brush, but it's got a really fine tip. And that's why you get it. So there it is. Now, the one thing I'm known for is that some of you would have seen it. Has anybody seen my plaid work? That's where I actually do things like, what do you call it? Your flannelette shirts and that sort of thing. So what I do with a flannelette shirt is, so you can see, can you see that? Hang on, I'll hold it, get the focus. There we are.
There you go.
Wow.
Perfect. Oh yeah. Now you can see it. Very nice.
See the weather? Do you see the dirt and the grot?
Yep.
Ian, how long did it take to learn what I'm going to call the artistic concepts, which is like where you need to put dirt because somebody brushed their hands, or where to put the shading and the highlights and stuff like that?
Okay, it's a process. If you take an interest, I've been lucky. I've done I've done painting classes with master painters. One Polish lady, she barely spoke English, but she was absolutely all fantasy painters. They do all these historical and fantasy figures, like the Games Workshop and then bigger pieces. And then I'm self-taught, basically. I started in 1982. I am that old. Painting wargaming figures. So I started with a figure's size of 15 millimeters. And then I just learned. And then in 87, I had to get a second job. So instead of going out, I started doing commission work and painting for other people. First off, I sold some of my figures. That built up a clientele, and I started painting and painting and painting. In 2016, I had to give up the bank job that I was doing. So I started again taking in figures, and that's when the 3D figures started to come onto the market, the 3D printed and then the 3D scanned. And that's where I started to really, my work started to take off, because my figure work is very natural in its style. So here this is a plaid. So what I'm doing stripes, just lines up the shirt. See, just a line up the shirt. So all I do is I just go. Do little tiny. So I start here, go across. The trick is I line it up with where I put it on the shirt sleeve. Okay, so there's. You'll notice I've left the edge of the sleeve. I don't paint that with the color, because I'll highlight that. Okay. Now what I do is I bring in the second color. Now, because I painted this black, I leave the black line. See you'll start to see it in a moment. Now, can you see? Hang on. Can you see the sleeve?
Yeah.
So basically what I'm doing is, sorry, I can't do two things. I've got to be able to I'm actually looking but I have to keep quite a steady hand for this. The brush helps.
Ian, do you have something that you use to rest your hand on to keep it steady?
Nope. But I've learned a trick. I do rest my hands. At the moment, usually I hold my elbows into my side and I hold it in front of me. At the moment, because I'm not working as I normally, I'm working to a camera. Because I'm working to a camera, I've actually got my left hand is my hold, and I've actually got that pressed against the table, which gives me a very still, very, very solid.
Okay.
You call it. So I'm not moving, but I don't always have it locked. I sometimes like to have free hand, like my hands loose. Okay, so there you got the stripes. See the stripes?
Mm-hmm.
The trick is now I'm doing a vertical line. So I've got a red, but I've got a tiny little bit of white into the red. because what I want to do is soften the line coming up. There you go. I do this a lot, so. Now I'm about to teach you that this is what changes the whole look of it. Wherever I cross a color, I put a dot of a slightly stronger color. So if I'm doing red, vertical and horizontal lines, I'm actually dotting where they cross. Because when you're doing weaving, this is something I've learned from painting, of all things, Scottish tartan. I used to do full proper kilts on figures that were 18 millimeters tall. Can't do that quite as I used to. There you go.
Ian, can I ask how many colors are on your palette right now that you're drawing from?
Okay, at the moment, I'm working on a red and a beige. So I'm working on 3 colors with that. I've got the red. You'll actually see. Hang on. I'll show you. There's my palette. Sorry, I'm using hand. Sorry about the shake. There's my red.
We're losing your sound, Ian.
Sorry, I've got my. Yeah.
Still losing it.
Only when he moves that screen, he loses his sound.
Yeah.
That's all I use. So the red, I was only using 3.
We just can't hear you, Ian.
You're frozen.
You hear me now?
Just a little. Your screen is frozen, I think, Ian. There we are.
Ian, I think you're muted though.
Yeah, sorry about that. Come on, don't you fall down. Oh, come on. Where are you? Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Your screen is shrunk.
Hang on. No, my mic's on.
But you're coming and going.
Yes, sorry about this. Basically, that's it all. I'm now going to turn this all off. That's the figure finished, right?
Yes,
Okay.
looks good.
That's it done.
It looks beautiful, Ian. I think the satellite is moving away from Australia.
I think it's gone to Antarctica, I reckon. It's totally. There we are. Can you see me now? I've swapped it over.
I can see you, but you're froze.
Has anybody got any questions on that? That's basically you saw me in about, I do that in about a third of the time. Yeah. So there's my painting, basically. That's
Well, I feel like I
that's what
just
do.
watched the Mona Lisa get painted. That was a beautiful job.
Thank you. Again, I always try not to scare people. Remember, I do this all day, every day. This is my job. I also do it for relaxation. I paint whether I'm being paid or not. It's practice. A lot of it is, you saw me learning the use of the tools. Like I was sitting listening to the saw blades. I can tell you, I was learning something there. Well, the same thing is, the two things people do a lot wrong with painting is they fill their brush with paint right up to the ferrule, right up to there, right up to the top. You only use just the tip of your brush. The other thing is they paint too much. The paint's too wet, and they get scared. Basically, you just soft touches. Always can add another color. You don't have to fill your colors and that sort of thing.
What do you mean by the paint being too wet?
Okay, I'll show you an example. That's too wet. That's too wet. Where we go, there we are. It's almost liquid. That I use that for washes, but people try to paint, and what it does is, if you're not doing it as a wash, it fills. Because there's actual paint that they produce called washes that will actually give you a flat wash. So you can do all this. I've had guys who do it not quite to the same finesse as me, but they'll go over it and they'll put a black wash over it, and and then they'll highlight again. It gets you out of trouble. That's right.
Anybody have any more questions for Ian?
Yeah,
yes,
I was just gonna ask with your faces. So you're really starting with a black undercoat, and like you say, you spray in the shadow. So you're not really trying to paint the eyes and the mouth and things. You're just using the black as the shape in the shadows. Is that right?
I know what you mean, Daryl, and I think you're right. And it's a whole different way of looking at painting figures.
Yeah, I always try to go after the eyeballs, and then I wind up with googly eyes everywhere. So just get rid of them.
Daryl, that is the biggest. As a figure painter, it's the one thing that bugs the living daylights out of me. Sorry, because people paint eyes in a 1/4 inch or a HO figure or an S scale figure.
Awesome.
They're the three big American. You don't see them. They're just a shadow. Literally just a shadow. Sometimes I have to put a dark line back in. I can paint eyes. I can do O scale eyes. I don't bother because you can't see them.
Yeah.
Oh, a painting an eye is actually a 7 paintbrush color process. I paint eyes. I do eyes up I do living eyes on figures that are 1/6. I do 1/6 busts. So I really work hard on my eyes. So I put color, I put highlight, I shadow them, I highlight them, I do the iris, I do all the little colors inside the iris, because it makes it, when you look at a figure, it looks really like you look at it. But with these, now I've actually got this figure and I've just given it a slight wash, and now it's got like a, what do you call it? It's still wet. Oh, the other trick, don't ever be scared to use one of these. That's my other tool. What that does is it makes me be able to work quicker, and it dries the figure out quicker. Anything else?
Is there any way that we can rescue the figures that we have now?
Seriously, yes. I do this all the time. I go back and get figures 20 years old. I will give them a black wash by adding a bit of flow medium into that's an art thing. It's called flow medium. You get it from an art shop. You put it in your water and you mix it with your paint, and you just wash over your paint a flat black, any good quality figure, flat black. Even a folk art, you go down to whatever your wife uses to get her fabrics, and they often sell folk art paint because they've got hobby stuff. And I just wash the figure. It takes all the color. If it's too thick, you got to strip it back. You got to take all the. If it's white metal, use brake fluid or anything like that. If it's plastic, what do they use? Dettol, which is a antiseptic wash, or alcohol, rubbing alcohol. Strips it off. Start again. Spray it. Paint it. Figures can be redone. I've actually taken figures of other guys, and we call it. It has a name. It's called fangifying, because my name's Fainges. They call it fangifying. I take a bad figure and I change it, and it all came because my son, who was 3 years old, wanted to learn to paint, and I would let him paint, and then I would come back and re-detail the figure. You can do it.
Now, do you have a larger figure with painting on it that we could see?
Yeah, I'm just walking away.
Please.
Literally, well, nice ask.
Oh, wow.
That's the same figure.
Wow.
Recognize him?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
It's similar. And then do you look in the mirror when you do it?
Oh, no, mate. I'll break the mirror.
Oh, beautiful.
Ian, what is your price range for a figure, an O scale?
Okay, it's $16 American to paint. It's 16 US to paint.
Okay.
Because of all, it's a lot of work. As you saw how quick, but that's a lot of skill. I'll go back over that and refine that before I sell it. I mean, I couldn't see half this time. I was working slightly blind. I couldn't see my lines. I was away from it because I'm trying to give you focus. And I appreciate the feedback because I can't see it because the camera's above me, so I can't see what's going on. When I do the convention, I've got a guy he's setting it up so I've got the focus. So hopefully I'm hoping I can share that on YouTube for guys to see and I'll put it on my YouTube. I have a YouTube site where my layout is on. You can actually see it. The easiest way to get to my YouTube site is either Fainges, I think it comes under. So Fainges is an unusual name. I'm the only one of the few Fainges in the world. It's Fainges. The other thing to look up is my Facebook page now this is totally different. It's Fanai 59. So Fanai 59. It's Ian spelled backwards with FA. My surname. It's just a nom de plume. 59 is what I'm known as, and that's my Facebook. It's Fanai 59 miniatures, and all my art, all my figure painting. I put up figures nearly every 2 days, and you can see close-ups of my figure work finished. Yeah.
I followed a lot of your figures on Facebook, and I'm always blown away with them. They look like real people.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm humbled by that. It's learn, it's practice. It's just practice. As I say, the 3D figures has changed it for me, because the figures are, without being, I knew a guy in the US in Colorado called Ray Lance, Lanz, who was an absolutely magnificent sculptor. The problem with sculpturing is you can only do it in one scale, and that's it. And the master goes off, gets cast. If it survives, you can reuse it. Most of the time it gets destroyed in the casting process. I'm about to do a caricature of a figure. You would have seen it. I shared it the other day. I'm actually worked off a Dave Meek art illustration, and I'm cast up 15 original figures, and Dave and I are going together, and through Gary, we're selling these figures off at Gary's place for charity. Gary Beatty's place. We're gonna raise some money for charity. Dave's going to give the postcard from where the artwork, and you'll buy one of my figures. It's totally original. There'll only ever be 15 of them. That's it. Gone. We've destroyed the mold now. So that's the sort of thing. As you notice, I'm actually wearing a Porto Borracho. I had to do that to Gary. I'm sorry. Gary and I Gary and I got to know each other through Facebook. I was so wanting to go to the US this year. I planned actually to go to Gary's in May, and then to go to Pennsylvania and go to one of Al Judy's meets at Harrisburg. Yeah. But my mum's had 7 falls in the last 3 months.
Oh,
yeah.
She's
not almost 90, and her 90th birthday would have been while I was away. No. I'm not going to see her. I've only got a short period. She's not that good. I don't know how much longer I've got of her, so I've sort of got to grab the time when I can. So, but next year, I'm really hoping that some of you might actually be able to come and visit me somewhere in the US.
Well, we'll look forward to that. Anyway, Ian will be back next week with us to show some more of his skill. And Ian, I can't thank you enough for doing this. As you know, I've been trying to get you for a while, and I really do appreciate you taking the time tonight to join us, because your figure painting is true art as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it is absolutely gorgeous. And one of the things I want you to think about telling us about next week is those signs that you put on those barrels. I could not believe when I looked at those barrels, and I asked you online, how did you do that? And you said, well, I just painted them. And I'm thinking, painted them? My God, I can't hardly see them.
I learned that I used to paint shields on little figures. I'm talking 15 millimeter. I used to do Robert the Bruce shield on figures in 15 mil. I can't do that anymore. I learned freehand. I've got a master. My skill is freehand. That's why I can paint plaids and all this sort of thing. It's good quality brushes and thin paint, and the other thing is, because I've done art, one thing I've gone to art classes and taught, you never paint the actual detail, you suggest it. So you actually look at something with your eyes slightly open, slightly closed, you get a blurry vision. That's what you're painting, is the blurred vision. Because that's what you see. You don't. The problem with photography, it gives you exact. Whereas a paintbrush, I can actually take away some things. It gives you ideas. Yeah, but I can always grab one of my boxes and undercoat it for next week and show you how I do a Acme rocket sled.
Ian, thanks so much. Look forward to seeing you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. God bless.
Well, now I was going to turn to Phil Edholm for the normal NMRA division and local club segment. But Phil has been busy and didn't have a new one. So I'm going to talk a few minutes about the one that he did last week, where the Hampton Roads, Virginia people came and talked about the development of their museum there. I had some correspondence back and forth with the people that are behind that project, and we've agreed that we'll share the promotion and try to support each other in our various projects. And to do that, they decided that they needed somebody that would work with us. So they appointed a person to represent them. And I did likewise. I've asked Martin Breckbill, MMR, to represent us and to see exactly how we can work together and what we could do to try to help them promote their project and have them help us promote the scholarships and New Tracks activities best they can. So we're working on that process right now. I'm extremely hopeful that that process is completed successfully, because if it is, then that can become a framework that we can use for other divisions or other clubs and their activities to try to get the local support for New Tracks and to give the local club and organization maybe a broader base than they can get by themselves. And if we can help them and they can help us, then it's a win-win for both people. And that's what we're trying to develop right now. From my standpoint and from New Tracks' standpoint, local contact is where it's all about. That's what I'm finding out from dealing with the local school board, from dealing with the Boys and Girls Clubs, to dealing with the local newspapers. It's all local. And talking locally and developing projects locally and helping support a national project locally, that is worth its weight in gold. So the more that we can find clubs, local divisions, to help support them, the more that we're going to get support locally for the projects that New Tracks is hoping to be successful with. So that's why we're doing it. And Martin was gracious enough to agree to take this on for us. So between that and the scholarship committee's activities, things are really looking good from my perspective right now. We've taken New Tracks, I believe, into a whole different arena than we've ever gone before. And I think it's going to be very fruitful for us. I hope that we have your support. We hope that you agree with the direction that we're trying to go in. And if you have any comments or suggestions, my email is jimkello@newtracksmodeling.com. This has always been and always will be your show and your volunteerism and frankly, what you want to learn about and how you want us to deal with the production and with the subjects and with the areas that we're trying to go in. There's a lot of ideas out there that we have. We need volunteers desperately because the more things we do, the more volunteers we need. Just like working with Hampton Roads, if we work with other organizations, we're going to need volunteers that want to do that. Phil and Pat need help producing the shows. Jim Allen and Jamie Bothwell need help with the website. It's just, we just need more volunteers. So if you have some time, if you have some skills, it doesn't have to be a great deal of time. It just needs to be enough to help us get over some projects that we're trying to get done, and frankly are taking more time and effort than we anticipate. The merchandise project that we've started, we've gone with a person that Hank Primas has introduced us to, a lady that he's been working with when he was actually employed and working for, quote, a real company. And he's introduced her into our group. And we're hoping that she's going to really be a big help in trying to get our merchandise off the ground. If we can do that, we're hoping that that's going to be a source of revenue, both for New Track shows and the cost of producing them, as well as the scholarship. So we've got a lot of things that we're doing, a lot of irons in the fire, and we just need your help and continued support. Now, with that said, that's our show for this evening. So I'd kind of like to turn this over to Phil for a minute and have him talk about the caboose segment of our show that we started recently, and where we'd like to see that taken. So, Phil, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jim. So, we talked about this last week and I haven't seen any. So if you have a video snip, all we need is, 30, 45 seconds of your layout of something you've done running, send it over to me. You can send it to me. I'll put my email in the chat here in a moment. Because we are looking for these, the cabooses to be more representative of, the work of our community. So if you have a video, send it over to me, send a snippet of it. If it's too big to email, point me to it. If it's already up on YouTube, point me to it, and we'll go ahead and grab it. So with that, I'll throw it over to Pat, and he can run tonight's caboose.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed the show this evening. I think we had some fantastic presenters on the show tonight, and there should have been a lot of information that you could have acquired. So I hope you enjoyed it, but most importantly, I hope you learned something. Until next week, happy modeling.